Welcome to Live Impact News. I'm Siobhan Riley. It is so great to be with you. We have been covering countless protests today here on WCNC Charlotte and on WCNC Plus. People have been taking to the streets of Uptown, and even in South Carolina and Rock Hill, we've been reporting protests in Union County. And people that we spoke to, they say they are protesting, citing immigration enforcement actions, as well as the war in Iran as to why they came out to today's protest. We're going to go ahead and start in Uptown. Tradisha Woodard has been following that story all day today, and she spoke with protesters, and here's what they had to say.
Mr. Joseph, this is his first No Kings protest. He didn't walk, but he wanted to come out here. He wanted to show his support. And today he said he was going to stick around and also start playing some music on his instrument, singing as well. Mr. Joseph, I guess my first question to you is, why is it so important for you to participate and be a part of the demonstration here today?
Well, I was getting pretty depressed hearing all the bad things in the news, all that's going on, and I think being able to do something about it has really lifted my spirit. So.
And one of the things that you're doing here today is playing music. A lot of folks, I saw them, every time you pull out your guitar, I see a couple of stragglers stop by. The name of the song you're going to be playing is The Streets of Minneapolis. Talk to me a little bit about why you chose that song before we take a listen.
Well, this was written just in this past December by Bruce Springsteen. I'm sure he won't mind me playing it because he wrote it about the protests against the ICE agents in Minneapolis and the death of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. And the story I heard is he wrote it in one day. The next day he recorded it. Then he put it on the internet, and then by the end of the week it was all over the world. I mean,
wow.
if you search for this song, you'll see different people doing it.
Nice. So we're ready to listen. We're gonna chime in. He not only plays, but he also sings. So let's take a listen.
Through the winter's ice and cold, down Nicollet Avenue, a city of flame pot fire and ice neath an occupier's boots. King Trump's private army from the DHS, guns belted to their coats, came to Minneapolis to enforce the law, or so their story goes, against smoke and rubber bullets in the dawn's early light. Citizens stood for justice, their voices ringing through the night. And there were bloody footprints where mercy should have stood, and 2 dead left to die on snow-filled streets, Alex Preddy and Renee Good. Oh, Minneapolis, I hear your voice singing through the bloody mist. We'll take our stand for this land and the stranger in our midst. Here in our home they killed and roamed in the winter of 26. We'll remember the names of those who died on the streets of Minneapolis.
Thank you so much for watching WCNC Plus on Live Impact. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:03. We just got finished hearing from Tradisha Woodard, who was talking to a man who just attended his very first protest. You heard him singing a song, talking about the people who died in Minnesota, talking about Renee Good and those who lost their lives in that protest there. Again, we've been covering protests throughout the day. We've had teams on the ground in North Carolina as well as South Carolina. Now we're going to go ahead and turn to Walker Lawson. He has been covering Union County where folks line the streets there. Let's take a listen.
Well, No Kings protests are happening across the Charlotte area, and this one specifically here in Monroe has people out here with different signs saying resist and protect democracy. Again, a lot of concerns from people out here are about the concerns over across the seas as well as the Epstein files. Now, again, a lot of families around here, we see young kids as well as people in their 40s and 50s, so there are all different age ranges out here. Now, we've spoke to some people that are here in Monroe as well as some people in Waxhaw. This is what they had to say.
I'm very concerned about Trump and his push towards autocracy, authoritarianism, oligarchy, kleptocracy, all those bad things. And I also am worried about his support for Putin and not for the other countries that are democratic, like NATO countries and Ukraine.
I don't want my son, I don't want my daughter to go to Iran, especially if we don't have a clear reason as why we're there.
Reporting in Monroe, Walker Lawson, WCNC Charlotte.
Welcome back to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:05. We just got finished hearing from Walker Lawson, who has been covering the protests. We've been talking to folks on the streets all day who have been out there attending those protests. He just got finished speaking to people who said they're really concerned about the state of our country. We're going to go ahead and turn to Richard Devane, who's also been covering protests. Right now he is in York County. Take a listen.
Yeah, we start our day in Fort Mill, and we're still here in York County, this time in Rock Hill. As you can see, a very vibrant crowd, lots of folks, lots of different reasons for being here today as far as what's particular to them. But as Chris Baird will tell you, everybody here, while they might have different reasons for being here, they have a central reason for being here, and that's they want change.
Yes, they want change. They don't like what the administration is doing right now, and they're very fed up about it.
And I've been looking at the crowds. You say this is the third one here in Rock Hill. You've been to all three. Tell us how the crowd stacks up this year.
It's becoming bigger and bigger. Also, I just came down from Charlotte, so it's good to see that the general area is definitely having the people come out here.
This event and the events that are going on all around our region, the central, if everybody who's not here could understand, what's the most important thing you want them to learn about the reason to have these No King rallies?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much in the First Amendment. You know, you have the freedom of speech, and you should be able to speak how you feel. If you feel that things are not going the way they're supposed to, if you feel that the government is not doing what you think they're supposed to be doing, you have a chance to come out and say, hey, we need to stop doing what is wrong.
And what happens next? What do you guys do with all of these folks who come out here and people blowing their horns? What is the overriding message?
The overriding message is to go out and vote. Vote for the people that you want to make change for.
And that's the key. Everyone we spoke to today says the same thing pretty much. They're looking for change. We're right here in York County. This is Richard Devane. We'll send it back to you.
Welcome back to Live Impact News. I am Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:07. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Just got finished hearing from Richard Devane. All day we have had reporters on the ground covering those protests in North and South Carolina. And overall, people that we spoke with, they have been saying that they want transparency from the government. We have heard from people who have been chanting messages, who have been singing songs, basically just asking for a change in the country. We're going to go ahead and go to break, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:10. We want to take you to talk to you about some scams that are happening. The BBB is talking about entertainment plans, and those of you probably have a lot of summer plans ahead, but what you probably don't know is that there are a lot of fake tickets that are being sold when you're making those entertainment plans. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what the BBB is warning people and talking about some of those scams that they are urging you to look out for.
Well, before you know it, summer is going to be right around the corner. It's going to be here, and a lot of folks are already planning for music festivals, things of that nature to enjoy the outdoors. But with folks getting ready for summer, so are scammers. They're ready to find new ways to take advantage of you and get your money, whether it is buying tickets or even dealing with storm damage, because we're going to be in hurricane season before you know it as well. We have Juliana O'Rourke from the Better Business Bureau joining us this morning with a warning, so we're not left asking where's the money. Juliana, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Looking good and fresh and spring-like.
Yes.
Let's talk about summer, and really anytime there's a festival. Let's talk about this festival ticket scam. How does this typically work, and why are we seeing so many of this so many of these scams right now?
Yeah. So spring is really popular, right? Festivals start happening again. Concerts outdoors. Obviously, March Madness is happening. So all of these things are big tickets, right? And so what happens is you're maybe scrolling on social media, you get served an ad for whatever festival, concert, event, whatever it might be. Looks really great. The ad's wonderful. You click on it. You go to a website. It looks really professional. You go to buy tickets. Maybe the ticket prices seem a little too high. Maybe there's a few other things that don't seem totally right, but it looks very professional. Aside from that, you go to check out. You realize you check out. You never get tickets. You're scammed. Or you get served an ad for an event that looks amazing. You go click on the website, buy tickets, and unfortunately the event's not real. So there's a couple different ways scammers are playing people, but at the end of the day, they just want to get your money.
They always want to get your money.
Yeah.
How would one discover that the event is fake? How do you see the red flags?
Yeah, so if it's an event you've never really heard of, right? If it's something new, something not public, like in the news all the time, or a yearly event, do some research, check out to see, hey, what are other people saying about this event? Has it happened anywhere else? People like to talk about they've had really good experiences or really bad experiences, and they go online for that. So you can definitely check that. Also, search outside of social media or outside of the ad you've been served to see what you can find about the event. Also, you don't necessarily have to click through. You can hover over that ad to see what the URL is at the bottom of the screen before you actually click to know, does this make sense? Is it going to thefestivalname.com, or is it taking you to some bizarre website with all these different letters and characters and things like that? And then once you get to the site, see if it's secure, see if it's got the HTTPS in the URL bar. You can also do some reverse image searching on Google to see where all these images are searching, or where they're appearing on this current website, as well as the rest of the internet. So there's a few things you can do to sort of be certain, hey, this seems legit, this isn't. And then one thing that we don't really talk about as much, but just trust your gut. If it seems too good to be true, it's probably because it is.
Yeah, I mean, because the likes of Ticketmaster and all of those fees, and if people hear that, you can get a ticket, to whatever concert or event elsewhere and so much cheaper, you avoid the fees. It is tempting.
Yes, it's tempting. Of course, we all want to get a good deal, right? We don't want to pay as much as the next person. But oftentimes when you see those much better deals or significantly lower ticket prices, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, and we have announced that so many musicians are coming to the Charlotte area.
Yes.
We're really going to have a good season of those kinds of events. All right, let's talk about this roofing scam.
Yeah.
So after a big storm, homeowners are trying to assess the damage, but also very vulnerable. So scammers are ready to pounce on that too, huh?
Yeah, so what happens is a roofing company, a roofer, may come to your front door, knocking on your front door and saying, hey, I'm doing work in the neighborhood. I've been working with some of your neighbors. I can do a free roof inspection. Especially this is prominent after we've had storms, and we just had that really big storm not even 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so right now is a time where they could be coming around, depending on where your house was, if you've noticed you've had damage. But it's very convenient that they just show up at your door, and they're working for your neighbors and such. And so they're offering these free roof inspections. But ultimately, you really want to have your insurance involved for any type of an insurance or a roof inspection. You want it to go go through your insurance, of course, and that is obviously tracked. And so you don't really want to just allow somebody that you've never met that is, came to your house unsolicited just go up on your roof, because if you don't go up there with them, or you're not knowledgeable about putting on a new roof, which I'm not,
right?
The normal consumer, I would assume, is probably not, then who knows what they could tell you. They could tell you that your shingles are bad, they could be making things up, and I'm not saying that all of them are going to do this, but there is reports that, this is happening, this is what scammers are liking to do, and so then what they do is they tell you need all these repairs, or you need a whole new roof, and they'll work with the insurance company, and then that's where it gets a little sketchy. You want to be the one in control, you always want to be the one contacting your insurance company to see what they say, have them come out, take a look at it. If you have some damage, get more than one opinion, and if a company does come to your door unsolicited, you should be able to ask lots of questions, get lots of answers, see everything in writing, look them up online. They should have a great presence online. Check out bbb.org to see if they're an accredited business. So you have plenty of avenues to take advantage of to look up these people before you decide to work with them.
Yeah, because once you have some storm damage and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, a roofing company just showed up, and this is a saving grace that they'll check things out for free. Is that not standard then for a business?
Yeah, so free roof inspections are really standard.
Okay.
What's just not quite as standard is somebody just showing up at your door unsolicited, because as you can imagine, this is people's time, which equates to money, and so they want to do the free roof inspections because it's worth it for them. If they do a free inspection and somebody signs on for a job, we all know roofs are very expensive, so it's worth their time. It's just when somebody shows up at your door, you didn't call on them, you didn't ask for it, that's when it's kind of like, is this actually legitimate or not?
All right, so ask the questions, a lot of them, if they do show up to your place, and hopefully, things, you want to go through your insurance company first too, right?
Yes.
All right, so what else do we need to know about the roofing scam?
Yeah, so I would just say that, anybody that's coming to your front door that you're not asking to have at your front door, regardless if it's a roofer or anybody offering repairs, just be very careful, and always research on bbb.org. We have lots of great accredited businesses, especially roofing companies. We have tons of them. Check them out, see what people have to say, see what their rating is, and that way you can feel a little bit more confident if you decide to hire somebody.
Yeah, very good. And it's always good to check out your home anyway before season.
Yes.
Get all those inspections done, and so you're not waiting in line and you're not being price gouged and being taken advantage of. Juliana O'Rourke from the Better Business Bureau, always coming in with some good information. We thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:17. Really good information from the BBB talking about roofing scams, and also talking about what to look out for those of you who are going to be attending some of those concerts. There's a lot of fake events and phony tickets out there. And overall, they said if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So those are some things you need to keep in mind as you purchase some of those tickets coming up. And next, we're going to hear from attorneys generals in North and South Carolina, and they're going to talk about sounding the alarm on how fentanyl money is moving through some of those very popular apps that you're used to using. That's next. Welcome back to Live Impact News. The time right now is 7:20. Thank you so much for watching us. I'm Siobhan Riley. Next, we want to talk to attorneys generals in North and South Carolina. They are sounding the alarm when it comes to how fentanyl money is moving through some of those popular apps that you are used to using. Let's take a listen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Jackson, Attorney General for North Carolina. I'm joined by Alan Wilson, Attorney General for South Carolina. Chief Patterson, you all know her, and her Chief Deputy, Ryan Butler. My thanks to all of them, especially Chief Patterson, for hosting us here. We appreciate you very much. Yes, sir. We're here to discuss a couple of things with respect to the fentanyl epidemic, specifically with respect to fentanyl money laundering. About a year ago, I stood nearby here with General Wilson, and we announced an effort that we were going to undertake in combination with some other AGs from across the country, a bipartisan effort. The basic idea is a huge part of the fentanyl epidemic is propped up with money laundering. We estimate that it is to the tune of about $100 million a week. This is an enormous amount of money. And if you want to tackle the fentanyl epidemic, you have to go after the money. So we looked at where this money was flowing, and the evidence was pretty clear that one of the main places where fentanyl money laundering was occurring was in an app called WeChat. WeChat is owned by a Chinese company called Tencent. So we joined forces to publicly tell them that they had 30 days to come meet with us and to work on a series of ways that they could improve their responsiveness to law enforcement and their investigations. And WeChat said yes to that invitation, I think wisely. And we were able to announce recently, after many months of work, that we secured a number of agreements with WeChat to be more responsive to law enforcement, to be more proactive in making their encrypted spaces hostile to fentanyl money laundering, and to escalating emergency requests from law enforcement and turning those around inside of 48 hours, which is very important when it comes to investigatory contexts. That's the good news. The bad news is that Tencent also owns a company called Weixin. This is also an encrypted messaging platform. And this is also a very popular platform for fentanyl money laundering. Tencent owns both WeChat and Weixin. They are essentially sister apps. The difference between the two is that WeChat has an international presence that is more subject to our laws. Weixin does not. In order to register for use of Weixin, you need a phone number from mainland China, but you don't need to be in mainland China to use the app. This is why it has been able to be used so effectively and insidiously for the money laundering of fentanyl proceeds. We have reached the end of our jurisdiction with respect to what we can do with Weixin. So today, we are escalating our requests. We are asking the President and the federal government to make this a national security priority. The President has already spoken at length about his belief in tackling fentanyl and has taken really positive steps in that direction. We appreciate that. We believe this deserves to be among those steps. Of all the things the President is negotiating with China, we believe that this deserves to be in the top priority. No illusions that this is the type of thing that can be handled overnight. This is going to be a major project, but we have been working for the last year with respect to WeChat, and we saw a major return on investment of our time. So we are suggesting that this become a national security priority because the President is in the position to pull a lever that jurisdictionally, frankly, we are not in a position to pull. I'm going to turn it over to General Wilson now. He's not just a South Carolina Attorney General. He's also a member of the National Guard down there, holding the rank of colonel, has been in for about 30 years. And he and I see, as neighbor states, the shared devastation from the fentanyl epidemic that happens downstream of all of the money laundering that enables it. I know our state is losing people every single day to the fentanyl epidemic. South Carolina is losing people every single day. So we're not just shared in running offense on this problem, we are shared in the grief that is created when this problem is allowed to persist. And on that note, General Wilson.
Thank you, General Jackson. Appreciate you so much. I want to thank everyone for being here today. You know, General Jackson did an excellent job of kind of framing the issue for all of you as it relates to what WeChat is as an application, how it is being used by those trying to engage in illicit drug trafficking, especially the fentanyl trafficking issue. When I look at this, and by the way, I appreciate the compliment, he is also a member of the National Guard here in North Carolina and wears the uniform as a major in the North Carolina National Guard. And so people who wear the uniform see things through multiple lenses. Obviously, as attorneys general and as the chief legal officers and prosecutors of our respective states, we see this as a public safety issue. We also see this as a public health issue. But as members of the National Guard and the armed forces who wear the uniform, we also see this as a national security issue. Now, at the state level, with local law enforcement and state law enforcement, we are able to use the tools and resources available to us by our respective states to work together with local law enforcement and state law enforcement agencies. We are also willing to liaise and collaborate and cooperate with our federal partners when it comes to public health and public safety. In South Carolina, back in early 2024, the very first state grand jury case we had that year dealt with Mexican drug cartels operating drug trafficking operations in South Carolina, and there was one particular state grand jury case that was called Devil in Disguise. That was his code name. This case involved us indicting through multiple jurisdictions in the upstate of South Carolina 64 defendants. Within this one narrative, there were 6 fentanyl-related deaths. In that one case alone, we seized enough fentanyl to kill 500,000 people in our respective states. All of this, and according to my local law enforcement sources as well as our prosecutors, nearly all of, if not all of this, nearly all of the fentanyl that was coming into our state, and I would say North Carolina as well, was done by the Mexican drug cartels in collaboration with Chinese labs being run south of the border. And so these drugs are being poured into the United States, and they're being aided in large part by Chinese-owned companies that own applications like WeChat and their Chinese counterparts, which we can't get to. And they're using these peer-to-peer apps to also transfer and launder money that aids in the transfer of these illicit narcotics into our respective states. That one case right there, 64 defendants, 6 fentanyl-related deaths, enough fentanyl to kill 500,000 people, was caught in just one case. But that is just one case. When you look at the public health component of this, in 2023, the South Carolina Department of Public Safety, or Public Health rather, identified that there were 2,157 drug overdose deaths in South Carolina. 1,550 of those were fentanyl related, meaning 72% of the overdose deaths were related to fentanyl. All this is being fed by the illicit drug trafficking trade that is being obviously supported by the Mexican drug cartels, in large part aided by the Chinese government. So for me, this is an existential threat to not only our states, but to the United States of America. As General Jackson said a moment ago, we have exhausted all the resources available to us as attorneys general, as well as our local law enforcement. We need our partners at the federal level. When I say the federal level, not just federal law enforcement agencies, but at the diplomatic level. You know, we have reached out to the administration to ask them to incorporate this as something that they need to consider when talking to China. China, as a country, is a pacing threat to the safety and welfare of the United States. This is something that I care deeply about. You know, in modern day times, there aren't conventional armies lining up on a battlefield in uniforms under banners and flags that are fighting each other. That may happen at some times, but that is no longer the main way that nation states threaten the public health, welfare, and safety of the United States. They engage what we call gray zone warfare, or that warfare that exists below the line of open conflict. They use proxy terrorist organizations, they use drones, they also use technology, they use cyber warfare, and they use what would be otherwise normal legal applications like Weixin and like WeChat as social media platforms, but they use those to facilitate a war of drugs on the United States, killing tens of thousands, if not millions, of our citizens in the United States of America, which is why the attorneys general, in a bipartisan fashion, this is not a partisan issue. This is a public health, public safety, and this is a national security issue. And so we have sent a letter along with a number of our colleagues to the Trump administration to ask the president to obviously recognize that this is an existential threat, that local, state, and even federal law enforcement are no longer adequate to take on the task of dealing with the Chinese government support of these applications that are being used by illicit drug narco-terrorist organizations. So I want to thank the Attorney General of North Carolina. I want to thank the U.S. Attorney. I want to thank local law enforcement, who you'll hear from in just a few seconds, for their cooperation with our state. We are in this together. If we don't work together to take this out, more and more of our citizenry are going to die. And that's why I'm up here with the Attorney General of North Carolina and your local law enforcement, because it's affecting us equally as bad as it is affecting you. With that, I will step aside and let our new Chief of Police here have the mic.
Thank you, General Wilson, and thank you, General Jackson, as well, for your service to our states, North Carolina and South Carolina, but also to your service for our country. Both Deputy Chief Butler and I are veterans, and we care very much about our country as well. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for being here today. At CMPD, we have one defined goal, and that is keeping our community safe. Sadly, this goal is under constant threat by the fentanyl epidemic. Fentanyl is not just a drug. It is a poison that undermines the safety of our entire community and demands our most immediate and determined response, as been noted by our speakers. It is important that our community understand that no single agency can take on this challenge alone. Traffickers are operating across county, state, and national lines and borders. Our response must be just as connected, with a relentless determination to dismantle networks that are eroding families by taking lives. What you see today on this stage and up here is a powerful example of collaboration. And since taking this seat, I have talked extensively about working with all our partners to solve the concerns that we have in our community. We are partners coming together from both sides of the aisle to address a national epidemic. As the AGs have noted, we are looking closely at how digital platforms, specifically apps like WeChat and Weixin, are being used to facilitate money laundering and drug operations. We are committed to closing that digital door. CMPD, along with our partners, will continue to hold traffickers accountable while doing everything in our power to protect our neighbors and our residents. Together, we are better equipped and better informed when we work together. Together, we will save lives. And at this time, I'd like to introduce CMPD Deputy Chief Ryan Butler, who oversees our Special Investigations Bureau. He will provide more detail to you on how the fentanyl epidemic is impacting Charlotte and what CMPD is doing to address it. Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Chief. To put a scale of this fight into perspective, in 2025, almost 80% of all overdose deaths in Mecklenburg County were confirmed fentanyl related. This isn't just a statistic. It represents over 1,800 calls for service just last year for our department. But we know that number is just the tip of the iceberg. It doesn't account for individuals treated on scene by our partners at Medic or the Charlotte Fire Department, those who self-transport to the hospital, or the many more who receive Narcan from a friend or a family member and never call 911. The true reach of this poison is far wider than any police report can capture. But our strategy to combat this nationwide epidemic is multi-layered. While our patrol officers are the first to encounter these substances, our Vice and Narcotics Unit are engaged at a much deeper level, working diligently to identify the source. We are also proud to work alongside many of our federal agencies, including the DEA, FBI, HSI, and ATF. We are tracking these drugs back to their global sources. We aren't just seizing pills and making arrests, we are dismantling the financial engines that keep traffickers running. As these criminal organizations evolve, our investigative methods must evolve as well. We have discussed the use of encrypted platforms like WeChat and Weixin, and the reality is our current lack of access to these platforms significantly hinders our progress. While we are maximizing every resource currently at our disposal, truly dismantling these networks requires us to close the technological gap that still stands in our way. We remain committed to the targeted enforcement necessary to hold these criminal organizations accountable. Thank you.
Any questions? Hi.
You mentioned that President Trump's administration has been open to following up on fentanyl-related issues. Has there been any response from the White House on this so far?
Well, we're sending the letter today.
Okay.
So I won't hold them to quite that standard of an inside the hour. But I will say, in the president's first term, he specifically talked about WeChat. Oh, he has said he is well aware that this plays a big role in the, as Chief Butler just said, the financial engine that keeps the fentanyl epidemic running. Any other questions?
Can you talk about your lawsuit with the Next Star takedown thing last week that you filed?
Sure, relatively new, but it has to do with the merger of two major TV stations, or rather TV companies that own a bunch of stations. So it would be the first and the third combining would be the largest TV company in the world, would reach about 80% of homes. So we've filed a lawsuit, and that is now pending, and I'll give you an update as soon as we hear back from the judge. I think we are expecting to hear something from the judge later this week. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate you very much. Take care.
Welcome back to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:37. We just got finished hearing from attorneys generals in North and South Carolina, and they are talking about asking President Donald Trump to make a national security priority when it comes to tackling fentanyl. That's something they say is people are dying every day due to fentanyl. Coming up after the break, we're going to take you to some of those No Kings protests. There's one happening right now in LA. We'll have much more. Welcome back to Live Impact News. The time right now is 7:40. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Siobhan Riley. All day we have been bringing you coverage from protests happening here in North and South Carolina. We do want to take you to LA. Let's go ahead and take a look. You can see that about 50,000 people are expected to be on hand in downtown Los Angeles this afternoon. You can see that protest is kicking off very soon, but the rallies, which organizers, they describe it as choosing democracy over dictatorship. This began last June, and they were held again in October. And Saturday, today, is the first since the January killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy at the hands of federal agents in Minnesota. And it could be the largest yet showing up today. We have been talking to people here locally in North and South Carolina, but you are taking a look right now at Los Angeles. As we mentioned, there are about 50,000 people who are expected to be on hand in Los Angeles today. You can see a lot of the traffic that is taking place in Los Angeles. And again, these No Kings protests have been taking place across the country. Here in North and South Carolina, pretty much the same story. A lot of people have been holding protests. They're calling for truth and transparency from the government, saying that it doesn't really provide either. We've been hearing from people in Fort Mill. We've been hearing from people in Uptown as well as Union counties. Again, as we mentioned, in Los Angeles, there is another protest that is taking place. As we speak, 50,000 people are expected to be on hand there in Los Angeles. And that rally, it was set to take place around 2 o'clock in LA. Again, we are going to bring you more coverage once they get started there. But to take you back here to North Carolina and just kind of tell you about, just to recap, we've been telling you that we have been covering protests in North and South Carolina and Union County and Uptown, as well as other parts. We've been in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and pretty much everyone just calling for change, people saying that they are not satisfied with the direction that the government is heading. We have heard from children, we have heard from adults, people really taking to the streets and just sharing their thoughts about these No King protests. We heard from someone who was singing songs, talking about the death when it comes to the death of Renee Good and the death of Alex Preddy. So again, No Kings protests have been taking place all day today, Saturday, in many parts of the country. And we're going to take you back out to LA just a little bit later. But first, we want to go ahead and switch gears. Now we want to talk about those spring allergies. Many of you have been dealing with spring allergies. I know that I have. I know many of you have been doing that coughing, that sneezing. Well, Nick Sturdivant, he sat down with a doctor from Novant Health to talk about what you need to look out for this time of year. Let's take a listen.
Speaking of pollen, let's talk about seasonal allergies because they are kicking a lot of folks' butts because it's tough out here for folks who deal with allergies. My mom being one of them, I saw her yesterday. Oh man, I got plenty of friends that deal with it. So many people. Dr. Alexander Atkinson, family medicine doctor at Novant Health, is here to join us on Live Impact News to break it all down. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Atkinson.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Happy to talk about some allergies and pollen.
So one of my first questions, how are the symptoms different versus a cold or an infection? Because myself, I might think, I think I maybe having allergies, but it could be maybe a cold or an infection.
There's a lot of overlap, and if you have really bad allergies, it certainly can progress into like a sinus infection or other conditions like asthma attacks and things like that. But I think if we really tried to boil it down to simple, a runny nose and itching would be more allergies, and runny nose and body aches or fever would be more like viral, so colds, flus, COVID, things like that.
Now I got to ask, what's the best treatment plan? What should folks do?
Well, treatment, it's very difficult because it kind of depends on what you're experiencing and what might be triggering it. So right now we're talking about spring allergies, and you guys were talking about kind of the pollen on the cars. And one thing I just want to point out to people is that tends to be the bigger, heavier pollen that kind of settles. So it's not the pollen that's really floating in the air going in your nose. It tends to be the finer pollen that you can't quite see And so that's why it's important to look at the pollen counts when we look at the forecasts from our meteorologists, because they kind of detect the finer pollen in the air that's actually triggering your allergies. But the treatment program or protocol would be first to avoid and limit your exposure. So that's not going outside when we have extremely high pollen counts if you don't have to. If you can exercise inside in your home or in your gym, that would be better than going out and running, especially if you do suffer from allergies. Not having your window open even though the weather is nice. Making sure we're changing our air filters often, dusting flat surfaces, especially ceiling fans, vacuuming often, and changing our bed sheets and washing them with hot water. So I always like to kind of caution and teach my patients that reducing exposure is just as important as the meds that we might be able to take and give you for it. Then the next part would be, okay, well, now I'm suffering from allergies and symptoms. What do I do? Well, there's really kind of three approaches that I like patients to think about and take, and they can pick one to start with and then layer others on, or they can just start with all three. The first being an oral antihistamine. Those are going to be the over-the-counter medications like loratadine, cetirizine, fexofenadine, which would be like Allegra, Claritin, Zyrtec. And then you take those once a day. If you aren't noticing as much effect, you might want to add on something like a nasal inhaled steroid. Those would be things like Flonase and Nasacort that you spray inside your nose. And the steroid in them kind of calms down the mucosa in your nose to keep it from being as reactive to the pollen. And then the final thing I like patients to think about doing is nasal irrigation, which would be like nasal saline mist sprays, sinus rinses, neti pots, and things like that, to kind of go in there, grab that pollen that's stuck in your sinuses and your nose, and then flush it out so that you're not reacting to it as much.
One quick question before I get you out of here, and thank you for your time, Dr. Atkinson. There are a lot of folks who are first-time allergy sufferers. Why might allergies start now if someone has never experienced them before?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we get that quite often. I've never had allergies before. I've lived here my whole life, and now all of a sudden I'm having allergies. Or we have people that just moved here, and they're like, wow, this is a whole different type of allergy. And really what allergies are is an inappropriate response by your body's immune system to a benign substance like pollen. And so that can be triggered by a new pollen that's out and floating if you're to a new area, or just your immune system this year was like, oh, I feel like I'm reacting to that this year. So it can be kind of random and hard to really nail down for sure.
Some really great advice. I know a lot of folks watching this. It's some helpful advice for them, for folks who've been dealing with it for a long time. Folks like Majestic Storm, our meteorologist, who just got here. This is her first spring season here in the Carolinas, so this is new for her. Thank you, Dr. Atkinson, for your time. Again, family medicine doctor at Novant Health. Thank you again for stopping.
Those allergies are no joke. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:48. You are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. You just got finished hearing Nick Sturdivant do an interview talking about those spring allergies that affect so many of us. After the break, we're going to take you back to some of those protests that are happening in LA, those No King protests we've been telling you about all day. Stay with us. Welcome back to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:51. It is so great to be with you on this Saturday. All day we have been covering protests. We have had many reporters in North and South Carolina during those No King protests. We're going to take you to Uptown. That's a protest that happened earlier today, and you can see that people are marching through Uptown, a very peaceful protest, holding up No King signs. A lot of adults out there. We've seen children out there. We've even talked to people who were singing songs about some of what they call the injustice that have been happening across the country. But you can see hundreds of people. They are lining the streets in Uptown. Many signs just saying that people are just not happy with what's happening across the country. Again, this is in First Ward Park, and we spoke to people who cited immigration enforcement actions and the war in Iran as the reasons that they are coming to today's demonstration. You can see that sign right there. It says MAGA, murders, minor, and so many other signs. Again, hundreds of people took to the streets of Uptown Charlotte today just to make their voices heard after speaking out about what's happening across the country. Those are No Kings protests. You can see people with their signs. We see children. We see adults. It's a peaceful protest that took place in Uptown Charlotte today at First Ward Park. We've also been in South Carolina. We've been in Union County. We've had crews everywhere today talking to a lot of those protesters. Now we want to go ahead and go to LA. There is a protest that is supposed to be taking place in downtown Los Angeles. You can see right now there's a lot of traffic in the area. But earlier we saw thousands, hundreds of thousands of people there in LA who were there getting ready for that protest. We know that protest is expected to draw about 50,000 people. 50,000 people are expected to be on hand in downtown Los Angeles today. That rally, again, taking place, is supposed to start at 2 o'clock. So, again, that's 2 o'clock LA time. So we expect that to be taking place any moment now. But the rallies are what organizers are describing as choosing democracy over dictatorship. They began in June and were held again in October. And today is the very first since the January killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy at the hands of federal agents in Minnesota. And it could be the largest protest from organizers. Again, 50,000 people. You can see now we're back out there where you can see hundreds. There are thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, I need to say, tens of thousands of people who are out there in Los Angeles getting ready for that protest that should be taking place any minute now. Again, people across the country have been holding those No King protests. In Los Angeles, we expect about 50,000 people. We've also had protests locally. There were protests in Uptown. There were protests in Union County, as well as Rock Hill, South Carolina, here locally. So across the country, many protests taking place, those No King protests, people just calling for justice. They're calling for change, many citing immigration enforcement actions and the war in Iran. Those are some of the reasons they say that they came out to today's demonstration. Again, we're going to continue to keep you updated about some of these protests that have been taking place. But again, you're taking a live look at downtown Los Angeles, where a protest is expected to kick off any moment now. Now we want to go ahead and shift gears. We want to talk about overcoming financial challenges, especially some of those challenges that many women face. Finances is always a topic that many people need to hear about. We're going to go ahead and listen to financial advisor Mark Henry. He joins us and he's going to discuss some of the challenges that women are facing, including their personal finances. Let's take a listen.
Here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, I'm Nick Sertivant. All right, so March is Women's History Month, and while there are signs of progress and accomplishment, look, women face more financial challenges than men. Many of them report personal finances as their top source of stress. I feel you. We have a man in here who said he woke up ready, born ready, financial professional, CEO, Alloy Wealth Management. Mark Henry, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing fantastic. Ready to crush it on this topic. This one's crazy when you look at the numbers on this thing.
We were talking about it during the break.
Yeah.
I mean, can you talk talk to us about the unique challenges.
This is going to blow people's mind because it did mine, and I'm not a boomer, but I'm very close. And the reality is this: think about this. It wasn't until 1974 that women could even sign on a loan without a male cosigner. This is craziness.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if they wanted to go purchase something, they had to find a man to sign with them?
Nope.
This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Not in my day. Not in this day.
Right, and you say 1970, that's not that long ago.
No.
And so what we find is that women, especially when it comes to financial matters, they face a series of unique challenges. A lot of times, they haven't made as much money as their male counterparts. Even today, with all the advances we've made, it's still about 85 cents on the dollar, 83, depends on what study you look at.
Yeah. Wow.
It's not okay.
No.
It shouldn't be that way. But it is. That is the facts. That is what the studies tell us. So you say, well, what other challenges? Well, they live longer. Okay? Oh, wait. Also, many times, not always, but traditionally, many times, they spent yet less working years because they were staying home. Like I think of my wife, Terry, of 32 years. She stayed home to take care of me. I mean, the kids always get that confused. But she stayed home, so she put less money into the system. Now, think about this. She's putting less in because she's pulled out of the workforce. Many times they re-enter the workforce. She never did, but many...
Welcome back to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Siobhan Riley. The time right now is 7:57. We just got finished hearing from Mark Henry, a financial advisor, talking about some of the challenges women face when it comes to their finances. Really quickly, before we leave, we want to go ahead and take you to one of the protests that happened in Uptown Charlotte. This is Uptown Charlotte, the No Kings protest that's happening, or was happening earlier today. You can see hundreds of people took to the streets. Thank you so much for joining us on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.